Let me ask y'all a question. Let me take you back to your childhood. I don't know. Did y'all do fireworks last night?
No, I saw them.
You saw them? Okay. Did you do fireworks? Okay. So last night, this has nothing to do with the message. It just, all of a sudden it came to me. Last night, we had some of the mortars, you know what I'm talking about? And for some reason, the first little mortar we put in there, I lit the thing, and it's down in the thing, and it didn't get out the mortar thing. It just exploded inside the thing. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if any of you had those happening, but last night I was sitting there talking with a friend, and I got one of them packs at Walmart, in the Walmart parking lot, where you could buy like 50 million fireworks in this one little pack. And all of them were just frustrated because they're all teeny tiny. I was like, this is why people hurt themselves. Because I'm sitting here after the first couple, I'm like, man, I got to do something to make this bigger. I done spent money on it, you know what I'm saying? I was like, I got to do something to make this bigger. So I'm like trying to figure out, how do I tie these all together and make them go off at once? That's why people hurt themselves with fireworks. If you would just sell the real deal, where we could set it up and light it for $15 and make a little show, then we would be fine. We would have emergency room visits. I avoided the emergency room. That has nothing. I was just thinking in terms of kids, you know, and this is where it came from. Sorry, I'm so sidetracked. Welcome, Foundation Online. If you're new with us, typically, no, this is pretty much it. This is the way it goes. Anyway, back to when you were little. When I was little, one of my favorite games to play was hide and seek. Are you hide and seek fans? Okay, cool. Did y'all ever play hide and seek? So I played hide and seek. My grandfather used to pick us up early in the morning, like crazy early in the morning. But it was too early for us even to be dropped off at school. But he would have to be in. He worked for the East Point Recreation Department. In fact, he worked at a rec center in Jefferson Park next to Tri-Cities High School called Jefferson Park in East Point. And so he worked for the rec. So we would go in early there before we could even be dropped off at school. That's how early it was. And so I had a basketball gym and all that kind of stuff, but our favorite thing to play was hide and go seek, because there was offices there and there were some extra rooms, all that kind of stuff, but he would never turn the lights on because it was too early to turn the lights on. And so we would play hide and go seek in the dark down these long, dark hallways. Well, there was this one hallway in particular at the very back. You had to go past the vending machines, around the corner, past the men's and women's locker rooms, all those things. There was this long hallway. I mean, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. And so to me, it seemed like a long hallway. But the long hallway went out to an exit door, but the exit sign didn't always have a light in it. It wasn't always working. So when that was not working, it would be dark. And I remember when we first started playing hide and go seek, that was the first place that I found was just the best place, because it was completely dark. So everything else was lit, like just completely, like light was coming everywhere. But if you turn the corner and you started down this hallway, you couldn't see a thing. And so what you would do is there would be a little bit of light that was coming from the bottom of the exit door. And so you would hide. There's a little cubby hole on each side of the door, a little column type cubby hole. You would get up in the cubby hole, and so that light would come past just a little bit, but it would make the cubby hole even darker. And so my brothers and cousins were younger than me, about 4 years and 6 years. And so if I was, I don't know, 9, 10, something like that, you know, they were 6, 5, right around that age. And so they weren't coming down that dark hallway. So I could play some hide and seek, and I could just sit in there the whole time, because they take a few steps. They're like, I think he's in here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if they would have found everybody, and like 15 minutes later, they'd be like inching down the hallway, like, I think he's down here. Of course, I was down there. That's where I hid every single time. Hide and go seek. Here's the deal. Sometimes we try to hide from God. And just because it's dark and it's a long ways from the light doesn't mean we can't be found. Did you hear me? There are moments in our lives we play hide and seek, and we put ourselves in a dark corner, and we just say to ourselves, you know what, it's so dark down here, and there's no light. I bet God's too scared to come find me. And you're wrong. You're wrong. God will come for us, even when we've put us in the darkest places. We see this in a guy's story, a guy named Jonah. We'll start with Jonah chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. It says this: the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. This is God talking to Jonah. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, and God said to Jonah, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. And that phrase, the word of the Lord, actually appears more than 100 times in the Bible, where God makes a decision, I'm going to give some instructions to someone that I know I can trust with those instructions. Over 100 times. What an incredible gift to receive a word from the Lord or a message from the Lord. That God would say, you know what, I can trust you so much that I can communicate my desire and my will to you, and I know that when I hand you this, you will do what's right by it. He said, hey, I want you to go to Nineveh. Nineveh, just to get you referenced correctly, Nineveh is the future capital of Assyria at this point in history. It's 550 to 600 miles northeast of where Jonah's supposed to be going. Jonah decides, hey, I want to go. I don't want to go to Nineveh. Instead, I want to go the opposite direction. And so he ends up going complete hundreds of miles in the opposite direction. Nineveh is on the eastern shore of the Tigris River. If you were to Google Tigris River and you were to follow it, it's on the eastern shore of the Tigris River. It's in modern day Iraq. In fact, if you were to Google the city Mosul, M-O-S-U-L, that it's right next to there. 2014, 2015, 2016, ISIS actually destroyed just a ton of ancient Nineveh artifacts and stone walls, or they were like clay walls that had been preserved, and they just wrecked them all. They took some dirt movers in there and just knocked them all down completely, destroyed them. It was all over the news, you might remember. Nineveh at this time is known for war atrocities. They're an incredibly brutal people, hundreds of thousands of people. This is an up-and-coming world power at the time, and they are completely godless. Well, I shouldn't say that. They actually are God-full. They are full of gods, many gods, tons and tons of gods, just none of them that are actually alive and real, right? And so in that sense, they are big G, godless. And God comes to Jonah and says, hey, go to Nineveh and preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me, right? Jonah says to himself, no, I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to go in the opposite direction. Jonah is told to go in English. In English, it comes across just fine. We pick it up in Jonah chapter 1 again. Go to the great city of Nineveh. But if we look at the original language, it is not quite go. We get the message from it is to go. But God literally says, arise. Rise up. Stand up. Let's elevate ourselves. Elevate yourselves. Rise up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me. In other words, he's trying to tell Jonah, he's saying, hey, I need you to rise up a little bit because you were made for more. I know this existence that you've created for yourself in these moments. I know that you're enjoying it. I know that you like it. I know you're a follower of who I am, of Yahweh. This is God talking to Jonah. He says, I know you're a follower of me, but you're made for more. Would you rise up and go and speak against what's happening in Nineveh because you were made for more? Jonah has to wrestle with that decision. When God speaks, we always have a choice. The enemy also has a choice. And so Satan, when he hears an opportunity given, when God comes to one of us in our lives and he looks at us in our eyes and speaks to our soul and says, hey, you were made for more than this. I get that the life that you've created for yourself in these moments, that you might be able to justify, how you've gotten here or what's happening or any of those things. But there's moments when he just looks at us and says, hey, you've settled for what you are right now. And you are made for more. And I want to extend to you an opportunity because you were made for more. And in that moment, the enemy goes into hyperdrive, overdrive, crazy, let me get in here. When God hands you one opportunity, the enemy always gives you three. If God hands you one opportunity to be made for more, the enemy always gives you three. And so Jonah is then positioned to make a choice. Do I pursue what God has given me? Do I pursue this made for more life? Or do I choose one of the other three that the enemy has now put in front of me? I want to tell you the story of Jonah very briefly, and I want you to hear or figure out, can you hear the three partnerships the enemy gives to Jonah and the three partnerships that the enemy always gives to you and to me when God enters our life and gives us an opportunity to do more? Jonah boards a boat headed in the wrong direction. He makes this decision. He's like, no, God says go one way. I'm going to go the opposite. And so he goes and he goes to this port. He goes to Joppa and he pays for the fare for this boat. And he's like, hey, I need to go to Tarshish. And so he gets on his boat headed in the opposite direction of where he was supposed to be going. And as he gets on this boat, he kind of settles in. He finds his little nook below deck. And in verse 1, 4, and 5, it says that God hurled or sent a wind to the Mediterranean Sea. In the original language, it doesn't say sent. It says hurled. So I got ahead of myself for a second. But that's what God did. It's this picture in the Hebrew that God had this, if you can picture someone throwing a baseball, right? And this baseball in particular had wind on it. And he just took it and it was like, pow, let me hit that Mediterranean with it, right? And that's what happened. And this storm, this crazy, ridiculous, just unseen storm has kind of overtaken what's happening with this ship. And so it set sail for Tarshish, but it's not making any progress because God has hurled a storm onto the Mediterranean. It's interesting. The guys that are on the ship, they're seasoned sailors, and so they know what happens when a large, massive storm takes place. And so they begin to dump cargo because they want to make sure the ship is light and can get on top of the waves as it comes and goes back and forth. And so they begin to dump cargo over the side of the boat, trying to make the ship light because they know if they don't fix this, that it's going to overtake them. One of our church fathers, John Chrysostom, he said it this way. He said, in attempt to lighten the ship's cargo, they proved that the weight of Jonah's disobedience was the heaviest burden. In other words, every single thing that the guys on the ship tried to do to make this right, they couldn't make right. That it was Jonah's disobedience that was making this wrong. And it would only be his obedience that could make it right. In other words, everyone around him was trying to solve his problem for him. But at the end of the day, it was up to Jonah to do the right thing. It was up to Jonah to decide, do I want to pursue the opportunity God's given me? Or do I want to make partnerships in three other opportunities that the enemy has presented to me? Jonah is asleep below deck. The sailors are lightening the load. They're throwing cargo left and right all over the place. And Jonah's just asleep. He's just oblivious to what's happening. He's not even aware that the storm, that the wind has been hurled onto the Mediterranean. He's not aware at all. And so the captain goes down below deck and he's like, hey, excuse me, sir. And he's asleep, he's taking a nap. And so he goes over, I'm sure he shakes him one or two times. I don't know if he kicks him in the ribs. I'm not sure how this happens. But the captain said, hey, I've got to wake this guy up. I got to wake him up. And then when he wakes him up, finally, he tells him, hey, you need to pray to whatever God you got because we're in a whole heap right now. You know what I'm saying? We're in a heap. And so I need you to do something about this. Get your rear end up and pray to the God that you worship, the God that you serve, and see if we can't be saved. It's interesting that this captain, who's not a follower of God, attempts to awaken Jonah, not only physically, but spiritually as well. The captain is successful in awakening him physically. He gets him up from his nap. But the thing the captain can't seem to do is to awaken Jonah from his spiritual sleep. But he's telling him, pray. Would you simply ask God what to do? But Jonah has decided, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to ask God because I already know what God's going to say. And so I'm going to leave asking him out of this, Captain. I don't want to do that. I've already made my decision, and we just need to paddle harder, row harder, throw more things. I don't know what you need to do. That's what we need to do. What's interesting is that the captain tells Jonah, get up. Same phrase that God tells Jonah when he says, rise. Isn't it interesting that the very thing that God was trying to tell Jonah, that suddenly the captain of his ship was telling him the same thing, but the captain wasn't even a follower of God. As Jonah received those words as he laid on the floor, do you think God intentionally gave those words to that captain so that maybe that bell would ring in Jonah's head? Hey, I'm still speaking to you. Rise up, because you were made for more. You were made for more. They go above deck and they still can't figure it out. Everyone's been praying to their God. Nothing is happening. And so they decide to trust this old tradition of casting lots to figure out who is responsible for this calamity that's happening on the Mediterranean Sea. And so lots is, we don't get specifics for how they cast lots. They could put stones in and assign each person a stone, and then they would toss it, and whatever number showed up, whichever number represented you. They could do straws. There's a multitude of ways of casting lots. Some involve bowls over your head, some just cups, some rocks, some stones, some sticks. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Either way, when they cast lots, the lot fell on Jonah. And so they all look at Jonah and they're like, hey, here's the deal. This tells us that you're responsible for the calamity that's happening to us. In verse 7, that's what it says. Who's responsible for this calamity? This is also interesting. Think about it. The word calamity literally means evil. Same word God used when describing what was happening to Nineveh. He said, hey, their wickedness, their calamity, their evil has come up before me. And now that same word that God used to talk to Jonah about the issue he had with Nineveh, the people on the boat are saying, hey, who has caused this evil? And it's you, Jonah. Isn't it interesting that a follower of God, when disobedient, falls into that very same category of the lost in terms of our connection to who God is? Either way, God still sees our disobedience as against him. That's what he says. Hey, their wickedness has come up before me. Would you go preach against it? And so God is trying to tell Jonah, hey, just because you're a follower of me doesn't mean when I give you the gift of a word from me, a message, a task, a mission, when you decide not to do that, I then become against that behavior. I come against the way you're pushing back towards me because I love you, because I know you were made for more. And so, no, I won't let you settle, God says. He said, I'm not going to let you settle for the life that you've created for yourself. No, I want you to settle into the life I want to gift you. Jonah still not having it. So, finally, they ask Jonah when the lot falls to Jonah. They look at him and they're kind of scared. They're nervous. Once they confirm this is Jonah's fault, that he's responsible for the calamity, the evil that's happening, that's caused this wind to be hurled into the Mediterranean. Once they discover that, they look at Jonah and they're like, who are you? Their minds racing like, who could deserve such an enormous response from a God? What have you done? Who are you? It's interesting. Jonah responds. He says, I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, the creator of the land and the sea. And they're just, what? Now fear strikes their heart even more. Jonah finally has a solution. It's to continue to run. Except he doesn't even have the ability to run himself. He looks at the people around him and says, hey, will you just throw me overboard? Jonah could have jumped. Jonah could have got a running start and just did his little plank walk, or just right off the side, nice swan dive, cannonball, jackknife, whatever he's going to do. He could have done that into the Mediterranean. But instead, he looks around at the other guys on the boat, and he's like, well, maybe could you help me get overboard? Maybe if you just throw me over, then maybe that's what's going to happen. Jonah. The guys on the ship, they're nervous about it. They're wondering, is that a good idea? And finally they decide, if we don't throw him overboard, we're all going to go overboard. And so I don't know if they do the thing where they get hands and feet and they do the 1, 2. Are we going on 3 or is it on 4? I don't know if that happened, but they eventually toss him over the side. And as soon as Jonah hits the water, it's calm. And then we pick up in one of the most incredible verses in the entire Bible. Jonah chapter 1, verse 17 says this. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. You see, instead of partnership with God, instead of stepping into what he was made for, he made a partnership with the enemy. In fact, he made all 3 partnerships with the enemy. Did you hear them? I think there's more to this story, but we need to stop at the end of chapter 1. We'll get into chapter 2 next week, because I want to make sure we understand these 3 partnerships, because for each of us, when we talk about this Jonah story, this crazy swallowed by a fish story, the truth is that just seems nuts to us sometimes. We're just like, I just don't see how we process this. But I want to caution you, there is more real life in chapter 1 than you could probably imagine. Because the partnerships offered to Jonah that he takes the enemy up on are 3 partnerships offered to every single one of us anytime God gives us an opportunity to be made for more. Did you hear the first one? The first one's probably pretty simple. He goes in the opposite direction. The first partnership that the enemy extends and that Jonah makes is the partnership of rebellion. A partnership in the opposite direction. You see, the one thing you have to admire about rebellion is its clarity and the courage it takes to do it. If you're going to rebel, you're just like, hey, here's the deal. I know what you said, and I'm going to do the opposite because I am so clear I do not want to do that, all right? And I'm so clear I do want to do this. And so I've made up my mind, and I've got courage that I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and it's opposite what you want, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to roll with what I think, right? You got to admire that clarity and courage that comes with just open rebellion. God says one thing and you do the other. Here's the thing about rebellion. Rebellion is a public middle finger directed towards God. It's a mixture of selfish confidence and recklessness. It's an incredible partnership that the enemy offers us. But I tell you what, it's not the enemy's favorite partnership. No, there's one that's much worse. Let's go to the second. The second partnership that the enemy offers every single one of us when God gives us an opportunity to step into something we were made for is apathy. A partnership of selfishness. You see, Jonah was sleeping while everyone else was thinking, right? How about that? A little rhyme, actually. How about that? A little poetry. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Jonah sleeps while the rest think, right? That's what's happening. He is clueless. He is apathetic. He doesn't care what's happening on the deck of the ship. The only thing he cares about is he's getting a little nap time in. He's running from God. He's in rebellion, and he's bought into the lie. You know, it's my life. And what I do doesn't affect anybody else. And so they can just get over it. I'm going to take my nap. They can do their thing on the deck. That's fine. He's just apathetic. He looks at the people above the ship and is just like, well, you got to do you because believe me, I'm going to do me. No regard to how his decisions and actions are impacting those around him. Here's the key. When you have a conversation with someone or you begin to, and you're in this moment for yourself, this is how you know that you slipped into the apathetic partnership with the enemy. It's because when you begin to have your conversation about why you made the decision you made, or why you stepped in to the worldview that you stepped into, why you're pursuing what you're pursuing, you'll hear this come out of your mouth. Lots of me's, lots of my's, lots of I's. And me's, my's, and I's are opposite of biblical worldview. Now, when I say biblical worldview, I mean that the way we approach and see our world starts with a lens that's over our glasses. Like sometimes you go out into the sun and you got to have a lens. You know what I'm talking about? Some sunshade, sunglasses. That lens helps filter out the sun's rays that are bad for us. And it helps us see our world in a different way. And I've got a telescope that I enjoy looking at the moon with. And it's got a moon filter. It's a 13% lens that allows you to look directly at the moon on a full moon night and get super close. But it makes it to where it doesn't hurt your eyes, right? And so a biblical worldview is the very same thing. It says, hey, when I look out at the world, I'm going to filter it through the desires of Jesus. And the desires of Jesus never have the me's, my's, and I's in it. It's always about community. It's always about love your neighbor. It's always about take up your cross and follow after him daily. It's always about inconveniencing yourself for the good of another. That's always the biblical worldview. And it's so difficult. It's so hard day in and day out to say, you know what, I'm going to put on my biblical worldview glasses and I'm going to approach the world and approach my life the way it's so hard to do that. Which is why we need each other to remind us, put your glasses back on. Make sure you're viewing this issue, this problem, this task, this decision through the way that God and Jesus would want you to view this task and decision. Don't take them off for a moment to say, well, I want a better picture. I want a clearer picture. No, we're making the wrong approach. That's what Jonah's doing. Jonah's saying, I get it. You've trusted me with the word. You've trusted me with an opportunity to be more. I get all those things, God, but it's just not for me. It's not my desire. This is my life, God. And when that happens, you become apathetic to the way it impacts everyone else around you. Me's, my's, and I's are so large, they sit right in front of our face. It's like simply staring at a mirror and approaching the world that way, just looking at ourselves. And Jonah has entered into a partnership with the enemy where he says, forget about the hundreds of thousands of people that you've asked me to go and share the good news with. I don't want to do that for the people in Nineveh. And forget about the people on this ship. Because it isn't what I want to do. Jonah enters into that second partnership. But to be honest with you, apathy is also not the enemy's favorite partnership. It's not apathy and it's not rebellion. You mean to tell you what his favorite partnership is? It's pretend play. The most dangerous partnership of all. The partnership of deceit. You see, the crew is on the ship, and when they discover that it's Jonah's fault, they're taken back, and they're like, who are you? because the guy that we met who paid the fare to get on our ship wasn't very significant to really warrant a significant response from God. Okay, so the guy that got on our ship was just like a nobody from nowhere who just paid some money and went below deck to take a nap. Who are you? They're beginning to see that there's a little pretend play happening. Who are you? They say. Well, he just flips the pretend play. At first, he was running from God and apathetic and rebellious, and so he was just pretending not to be connected to him. But now that it's out in the open that he's connected to God, he's going to play pretend play twice. And here's how he does it. That when they ask him, hey, who are you? He responds in Jonah chapter 1, verse 9. He says, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Can you imagine what's happening here? The captain has gone below deck, kicked him to wake him up, physically has been successful at awakening him, unsuccessful at awakening him spiritually because he asked Jonah, would you pray to your God? And Jonah's like, nah, I ain't going to do that. But when it finally comes out and everything points to him, by the way, Jonah didn't admit it. It was found by casting of lots. They begin to look at him and say, who are you? And he realizes his first pretend play has been found out. So he goes to the second act and he says, I am a Hebrew. In other words, I am part of the people of God. That's what that means to those people. He says, I'm a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the highest name that can be given to a God. Master of all is what Lord means, right? And I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Every significant space to whether you are far from God or a God, the heavens, the sea, and the land, the guy I worship made it all. And so the people on the ship are beginning to wonder, they're like, what is this guy talking about? You mean you worship the guy you refuse to pray to? Is that what you're saying? You mean you're connected to the guy who created all of this and you're running from him? They just call him out on it. They're wondering, how can you worship a God but not obey him? How can you worship a God and not obey him? Man, that's a tough one for me, because there are moments in my life, ongoing moments in my life, where my obedience is not connected to my worship. Where Sunday mornings, I give my worship and song all I got. And then by Monday afternoon, my obedience level is far from my level of worship. It brings to mind a quote. It was in one of my favorite songs growing up by one of my favorite bands, DC Talk. I don't know if any of you are DC Talk fans out there. Are you DC Talk fans? Yes? You got a favorite DC Talk song? No, you can't think of it. I'll just put you on the spot. Okay. Man, just some, and I don't know if you've got a favorite DC Talk song, but there's this one line, and it was a quote. DC Talk didn't write it, but there's this one line by Brennan Manning. And they quote it and they say this: the greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge him, who acknowledge Jesus with their lips and walk out the door and deny him with their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. I can't tell you how many times I've been guilty of just that. Being a part of the single greatest cause of atheism in the world, where my obedience just simply didn't line up with my worship. I guess really that causes me to ask the question, what is worship? And I know this definition doesn't encompass all of it, but in the context of what we're talking about in Jonah chapter 1, I believe it addresses it wholeheartedly. Would you listen to this? Worship is obedience when we don't want to. Like I said, I know that's not a holistic definition. Worship is even more than that. But worship for sure is obedience when we don't want to. When we're offered a partnership with the living God to be made for more, and we decide to rebel, to be apathetic, or pretend play, we have stopped the worship game. We've created another game altogether. But worship, to give our obedience to God, the Lord that created the heavens, the sea, and the land, all those things, man, that's what we're called to. Worship is obedience when we don't want to. Worship declares that something or someone is worth it. I guess the really big question we have to ask for us that Jonah had to ask himself is God worth it when we don't want to? Is God worth it when we don't want to? So I guess the follow-up is, okay, well, great. So we've made a case. We've built the case for the 3 partnerships the enemy offers. Every single time, God offers one partnership to be made for more. So how do we overcome? How do we stop these partnerships? It's simple. Remember Jesus and have faith. Right? Like, that's it. Like, that's what you want to do. How do you stop the partnerships? How do you stop being apathetic? How do you stop rebellion? How do you stop pretend play? Remember Jesus, have faith. That's it. It's so simple. But let me walk it out practically for you. This is what the world will say. Hey, this is my truth. This is my plan. These are my hopes. These are my dreams, my desires. Here's the deal. If we're followers of Jesus, we traded all those in for the desires of Jesus. All of them. And so instead of my truth, it's Jesus' truth. Instead of my plan, it's Jesus' plan. Instead of my hopes, it's Jesus' hopes for me. Instead of my desires, it's the Lord's desires for me. And thank goodness, because our truth, our plan, our hopes, our desires, our dreams, they aren't all we could be. They are dim reflections of what we could be. And we don't want to settle. Don't settle. I'm begging you. I'm begging you, don't settle. Don't settle for what you can dream up. Because compared to what Jesus has for us, our greatest dreams are simply nightmares. I'm telling you, when God extends you the opportunity to be made for more, the enemy goes into hyperdrive and he says, I've got 3 other partnerships to give you. Tell him no. Tell him no thanks, no deal. No thanks, no deal. No thanks, no deal. Because you were made for more. You and me both. We were made for more. Our life is not our own. We were made for more. I want to give you a few minutes just to let that sink in. Just let it wash over you, because Jonah chapter 1 is heavy. And it's heavy because it has to do with our life, every single one of us constantly. This is the enemy's plan. God gives you 1, I'll give you 3. Look at my selection, the enemy says. But you're made for more. We're going to sing just a bit. And I got something pretty exciting to share with you as soon as we wrap that. Ben?